This is the Sandman podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're chatting about the Sandman Chapter 10, Lost Hearts.
And you, who call yourselves collectors, until now, you have sustained fantasies in which you are the victims, comforting daydreams in which you are always right. But no more. The dream is over. I have taken it away, for this is my judgment upon you, that you shall know from this moment on exactly how craven and selfish and monstrous you are. That you shall feel the pain of those you have slaughtered and the grief of those that mourn them still. And you shall carry that pain and grief and guilt with you until the end of time.
Welcome back, fellow dreamers. This is TV Podcast Industries. This is the Sandman podcast, and we are chatting about Chapter 10 of the Sandman, Lost Hearts. I am one of your hosts, John.
I'm one of your other hosts, Derek. The season finale, kind of.
Indeed, it is, yes. It is the series finale, although there is an episode 11 as well that we will be covering, which is kind of a two-parter, one with cats, one without cats.
That's true.
So we will be doing that as well. But yes, technically this is the closing of the book for this 10 episode or 10 chapter series of the Sandman.
Exactly. Episode 11 is almost an epilogue to the season.
It is. I believe they called it the Sandman Special Event.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
exactly.
It is obviously connected with the Sandman, but not to this overarching story of these 10 chapters.
Yes.
But welcome back, fellow dreamers. Remember to subscribe over on our website at tvpodcastingindustries.com, where you can go into any dreamlike or nightmarish podcast catcher of your choice to listen to our soothing, dreamlike voices.
I hope so.
Yes, exactly.
I hope they're not really irritating voices.
And please send your emails to feedback@tvpodcastingindustries.com for all your feedback, thoughts, theories, comments, and judgments, shall we say, on the Sandman as well.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, we want to hear your thoughts for the final episode. Just email them into that email address, or pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. There's a spoiler post up there for episode 11 as well. So pop in your thoughts there. And yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts. A bit of news today. As we're recording, John, we're recording on the 28th of September. Well, for those of you who haven't got enough of Sandman from the Netflix TV show, unfortunately, it's not confirmation of season 2. But excitingly, Act 3 of the Sandman Audible production is available right now on your Amazon Prime device on Audible. So go download it. It's an excellent set of stories. Just came out today, so I haven't had the chance to listen to it yet. But the first 2 acts are brilliant, excellent translations of the comic books, directly translating from the comic books. Unlike the Netflix version, it hasn't been adapted or updated. It is exactly as it appears on the page, pretty much, with the occasional description of what's going on. But a beautiful production. Act 3 out today, another 12 or so issues, which is about 13 or 14 hours of new great Neil Gaiman Sandman content for your ears.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. And Netflix, please get a move on with the announcement. It's becoming quite nightmarish, this hiatus that you are leaving us in. But anyway.
No, I did just see that Boyd Holbrook and Tom Sturridge, who plays Morpheus, and Boyd Holbrook, who plays the Corinthian, are both going to be at New York Comic Con in just over a week's time. So you never know. There may be a surprise announcement from Netflix there of a season 2. You just never know. But we are hopeful.
Netflix.
Come on, Netflix.
Come on. But with that, let us get into our spoiler-filled discussion of Chapter 10 of The Sandman, Lost Hearts. Mm-hmm. Derek, tell us who, what, when, where, why, how, and when.
Okay.
But why?
I presume that's the people behind the series.
Yes.
Grant. Well, executive producers of the show are Alan Heinberg, Neil Gaiman and David S. Goyer. This episode was written by Jay Franklin, who was a production assistant on The Daily Show, interestingly, for over 2 years. Also worked as a production assistant on the drama show For the People as well. And this is his first credit on The Sandman.
Great stuff. Yes. I'm surprised it wasn't just behind a desk.
He was just a showrunner in the background. He's running around the whole time. The episode was directed by Louise Hooper. Louise directs the Calliope segment of the final episode of Sandman as well. Directed 2 episodes of the most recent season of Inside Number 9, John.
Excellent.
You'll remember these episodes. Remember Wise Owl and
Yes.
Mr. King. 2 great episodes of Inside Number 9. If you haven't checked that series out, definitely check it out. It's one of the most brilliant dark comedy.
Well, Wise Owl was particularly dark.
It certainly was, with animation in there as well, and
Yes.
some really dark elements. But Mr. King had a little old school British horror in there too, so certainly watch that.
Most definitely. Yes, those road safety cartoons will never, and fire safety and overhead pylon safety cartoons that we used to get as kids. Yes, it messed with my mind.
Definitely.
As always. But great show. Great show.
Absolutely. And we've also talked about Louise Hooper on this here podcast because she directed 2 episodes of The Witcher Season 2.
Excellent stuff.
We talked about earlier on this year.
Yes, it must have been the one with the bath, I guess.
It might have been. There wasn't as many baths in the second season as there was in the
wasn't,
first,
actually.
unfortunately.
Oh, well.
But, John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for the technically season finale of Sandman, Chapter 10, Lost Hearts?
Sure. The Corinthian warns Rose that Morpheus plans to kill her to protect the boundaries between the dreaming and the waking world, and manages to persuade her and Jed to stay in his hotel room as he heads down for his keynote speech at the Serial Convention. But as the Corinthian places the collectors into his collective dream, he is interrupted by Morpheus. But the Corinthian shows Morpheus that Rose's increasing power and the weakening of the boundaries of the dreaming enables him to defend himself against his creator. In the meantime, Rose and Jed have fallen asleep, which allows Morpheus to inform Rose of the great danger she poses to the waking world, prompting her to temporarily restore the dreaming, and allowing Morpheus to unmake the Corinthian. Morpheus punishes the convention attendees with clarity about their crimes, allowing Rose and Jed to leave the hotel unharmed. That is until she falls asleep again. That night, Rose confronts Morpheus in the dreaming and is ready to sacrifice herself to save her friends and brother, but they are joined by Unity Kincaid and Lucienne. They inform Morpheus it was Unity who should have been this era's vortex, and Unity convinces Rose to transfer the vortex into her, allowing her to sacrifice her life for Rose's. Morpheus realizes that Unity's golden-eyed man who impregnated her while she was with the sleeping sickness was Desire, who planned to pass the vortex to her descendant in an attempt to have Morpheus spill family blood. Morpheus confronts Desire, warning them and Despair against further scheming. Back in the dream realm, Morpheus remakes Galt as a good dream and endeavours to act as a more benevolent ruler of the dreaming, leaving Lucienne to take care of his affairs while he creates. In the waking world, Lyta, with her newborn son, moves with Rose, Jed and Hal back to New Jersey. In Hell, not New Jersey, after being reproached by Lord Azazel and the Dukes of Hell, Lucifer Morningstar ponders a new plan that will really anger God and wreak revenge upon Lord Morpheus.
What a way to end the season with that nice little cliffhanger that you will definitely know if you've been reading the comic books, but we're not going to talk about here to spoil John. We definitely won't spoil John.
No, don't spoil me. I want Netflix to spoil me by saying season 2 is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Netflix.
Excellent, John. Will we get into discussing this final episode of this 10-chapter run? I'd love to know what you thought about this episode and how it wraps up the overall arc of the season.
Well, yes, definitely. Let's get into it, because I really loved this episode. Certainly thought it had a really nice through line of all the 10 episodes. And in a sense, how the Corinthian was played out. Mm-hmm. Just really connected them all really good, and with Unity Kincaid as well. Mm-hmm. Just those nice little touches in the earlier episodes of Unity with her sleepy sickness, mm-hmm. And being so important in this final run of episodes. So I thought this really worked well together, even though, if I understand correctly, they're kind of two separate arcs within the comic series to some extent. Yeah. And maybe not totally detached from one another. But I really liked how this really all connected through, for sure.
I think, as myself and Chris both mentioned earlier on in the season, one of the most interesting things about the Sandman comics is that there are things dropped in like a panel that will appear and become really important later on in the series. And that seems to have been what they've done on the Netflix show quite
definitely.
well. As we said, Unity Kincaid, for example, falling asleep in that first episode, and then you get her story, 5 or 6 episodes in, you get what happened to Unity, and then it becomes so massively important at the end of the series. But
that's it. It's the shot of Unity, with the dollhouse, back in 1930s or 1920s, London or Britain, where, yes, they mention the name, but it's just that little touch of having her going into the sleepy sickness, but also then just her being so central and being part of Desire's long-term plan, even though, in a sense, watching the series, you're going, oh, it was Roderick Burgess, you thought that was part of the plan.
Yeah.
Or it was, John Dee, played by David Thewlis. All these different aspects, or even the Corinthian, and yet it ends up being Unity Kincaid. So there's some real nice, those connections there through here. So I really thought it was a great ending to this story, for sure.
Excellent.
But shall we crack on with the top moments from the chapter? We have Corinthian creates a new dream realm with Rose as its dream lord.
Oh, what a great use of Corinthian here. We've kind of been trying to work out what his plan is. He seems to be really knowledgeable about what's going on, and this idea that he's suddenly found this vortex and is going to use it for his own benefit. I thought this was such a great showdown for this show. This idea of what's happening here is Corinthian's going to use his keynote speech that we all kind of laughed at, this idea of having this serial killer going to speak to other serial killers. We all kind of laughed at this. What's he going to talk about? Well, actually, he's going to use this to convince them all to get into a dream state and dream about a world where they are the heroes of America, effectively, and sitting them all together to get in on this idea, and this dream has created this new realm that effectively isn't being controlled by Morpheus. He's setting up Rose to be the center of this dream, and she's now in control of it all because she's there, and everybody's having one collective dream, which is allowing the walls to break down quicker than it would in Morpheus's version of the dream world.
It's like the collective power, the collective energy of all this dreaming of people with the same mindsets.
Yeah.
And just even the way that the Corinthian talked at the convention, it's soothing, close your eyes. It was almost like going into a meditation or sort of a well-being spa or something like that. So it was really, really good. And of course, I'm amazed he was able to persuade Rose and Jed to stay in his hotel room, to be honest, given that they had just witnessed him murder Fanboy, and of course Jed had witnessed him murder his stalker, effectively, the pretend collector from the
journalist,
the journalist. So I was just really surprised that he was able to do that. But at the same time, I say that, of course, it's because he's giving a warning to Rose, because underlying all this episode, which I thought was really good, is an inevitability that Morpheus will kill Rose. And this is what Corinthian warns her, because she is a threat to him and his realm, because her power will weaken these boundaries. She will in effect become the center of the dreaming.
Yeah.
And that's what Corinthian is looking to harness here. So I really, really enjoyed that idea. As I say, I was just wondering, how and why would they stay with him? But he is basically, I'm the lesser of two evils. I don't want to kill you because you're the center of my dream and will be the dream lord in that. Morpheus, you're a threat to him.
Yeah.
So that was really good as well. And I think then seeing how these boundaries, because Corinthian is there saying, you'll become the center of the dreaming. You'll pull down the walls between dreams and the waking world. This idea of these boundaries in place. And then actually just being able to visualize that when Morpheus enters into the big serial killer loving that the Corinthian has helped engineer in a sense, and see the Corinthian stab him through the hand. It's just a good physical point of, yes, this is no longer a place where Morpheus is invincible, essentially, or, beyond the normal physical laws. So
absolutely.
I really enjoyed that.
I love Corinthian's line to him, do you never think that dreams die? It sounds like such a great line that you're wondering why somebody else hasn't used it before now, really good moment. But it is a great battle between the two of them. But I just wanted to quickly talk about this moment of the shared dream with all of the serial killers. I love when you're kind of going into the minds of some of these crazed serial killers who are seeing themselves at their work chopping up bodies, and they're all in different rooms. And as Rose is being fought over by Morpheus and the Corinthian, those walls are breaking down between each of the serial killers. I don't know, it's like something out of Hellraiser when you're seeing a bunch of murderers in different rooms who are about to converge together and join. Like, we heard the kind of salivating that came from the good doctor when she thought she was going to be able to team up with Corinthian and Nimrod to murder the journalist. This idea of, loads of serial killers getting together and using their own abilities to work together and kill even more people in more brutal ways. And that's what this scene looked like when you had three different serial killers all with bodies in front of them, and Rose right in the center of it being fought over by Morpheus and Corinthian. There was a kind of a creeping dread at this idea of breaking down the walls between each of their dreams and making this truly horrific world where they're in charge almost. Loved that kind of stalking tension, because Rose is being fought over by two different people who have two different complete opinions. One will end with her death, which eventually she does accept that could be the right thing to do. And the other one will end with her being the new owner of this, of the dream realm. She's the one at the center. She'll take over from Morpheus. So you can understand the argument, but I love that she's going, if I have this power, I can choose my own path.
Yes. Well, that's it. And she does, sort of reinstating the dreaming here. I mean, actually, Rose is really philosophical here, despite having the warning from the Corinthian, the threat from Morpheus. In the end, she's actually quite philosophical. It does feel that she's thinking of the greater good. Yeah. Even later on, it's about protecting her brother and her friends, So I really like that. But I think, as she restores that, and then you have Morpheus with his powers reinstated or re-energized so that he can effectively uncreate his nightmare, the Corinthian. I just really enjoyed this, just this whole conversation. The Corinthian says, I do it so I can taste what it's like to be human. You just care about realms and rules. You know, to which Morpheus is going, I created you poorly.
Yeah.
You know, and again, it's just, you hear Morpheus saying, you know, the next time I create you, you'll not be so petty, little dream. It's as though the Corinthian has gone from what he thought was his greatest triumph to this little dream, of no significance.
Yeah. And once again, you know, to take the theme that we've seen all season, this is Morpheus learning who he should be as the head of the dreaming. You know, this idea that he's saying, this is my fault. I created you poorly. If I had created you better, we wouldn't be in this situation right now. I have no blame on you, Corinthian. I'm just going to unmake you because it was a poor creation on my part. I really love that moment. It's not a battle between the Corinthian and Morpheus here. It's Morpheus, the all-powerful, saying, actually, I'm just going to uncreate you.
Yes. Really good. And I mean, with the Corinthian, you know, there is that contrast between the Galt as well, you know, the other nightmare that went into the world, and how Galt worked in the waking, you know, independently of the dream realm compared to the Corinthian. So there is that contrast here. And maybe with this moment, that's where Morpheus sees it.
Yeah.
You know, and feeding into why when he's back in the dream world at the end, he effectively brings back Galt, but in a way that she was hoping she could become. So she becomes a dream. So I thought that was really, really nice touch.
Absolutely. And remember, Galt did the same thing. She took Jed, created a single dream that only had Jed at the center of it, and was trying to be a dream for Jed, cutting him off from the rest of the dreaming. So that is very similar to what Corinthian does here. The show was kind of telling you this thing is possible. You can cut people out of the dreaming and set them up in their own dream realm away from Morpheus. But the big difference here is because Rose would have been the vortex with her at the center of it, then suddenly this could take over the entirety of the dreaming, removing them all from the realm and powers of Morpheus. So I love that. I love that there was that little touch of setup.
And I'm glad that we got the sunglasses off so we could see the mini mouth eyes as well. And I must say, I like the fact that with Morpheus unmaking the Corinthian, the only thing that's left is that little skull with the little mouth eyes and the normal mouth.
He realizes it started with a basic idea, the idea of a person with mouth eyes. That will be really scary. I'll make them into a nightmare. And he made them poorly, so he'll start with that same concept again, but they won't be made as poorly next time. Yeah. I guess that's the idea, but it did look really cool.
But I mean, you know, having 3 sets of gnashes to keep and maintain, I guess his dental bills were massive.
I'd say so. They're pretty good looking teeth. Yeah, pretty good looking teeth.
So it was really good just that it wasn't a battle. It was the creator uncreating his creation.
Exactly. Let's talk about the other part of that then, because it does lead into a battle later on. Rose is still the vortex. They escape from the hotel. Herself and Jed go and find out that Light has actually already been taken in to give birth to her baby. So they end off in the hospital with Rose really scared of this idea that Morpheus could take her at any time. He could kill her at any time and she'd be removed from the world. And then Jed once again would be left all alone. So we do have this moment where she's trying to get her affairs in order in case this happens. What happens if I don't wake up the next time I sleep? You hear Rose talking to Lyta about that, and her talking to Unity. In case I die, can you make sure that Jed's taken care of effectively? So Unity sets up the ball rolling on that to make sure that no matter what happens to any of them, they will all be taken care of.
Exactly. I did like the fact that Lyta with her newborn baby was effectively being the war cry for Rose as well. As I say, Rose was actually quite balanced and philosophical, or, it almost an inevitability about it. Lyta's fight him, destroy him. Why don't you take over the dream world? I was like, all right, Lyta, calm down.
Well, again, while Dream didn't really do anything, he sent a ghost that didn't belong in the dreaming back to where they were supposed to go to. in Lyta's mind, she killed Hector, and her possibility of living together with Hector and their baby in the dreaming, he killed that possibility, which, so from her point of view, it's a massive overstep for what Morpheus did. So the idea that Rose would also be lost to her is
no, that's true.
Is a massive problem.
She's still hurting, absolutely.
Yeah, really, definitely.
For sure.
But then Rose falls asleep, and we once again see that Hal's dreaming about his drag act, Dolly L'Amour, on stage. Yeah. This time, though, he's having a duet with her. It's not a whole attack on pulling off faces and I'm not the real person that you see. It's actually that both of us exist here, both of us are equal, and both of us can work together to have a great future, which plays into the end, which we'll also talk about. But then effectively this great moment of Rose watching on and then banging the stage door, and the whole room falls apart, and suddenly they're standing in the middle of a field, but this field leads into another dream, which is once again Chantal and Zelda, where Chantal, the Spider-Woman, is trying to read a passage of a book and can't get over a part of it, and Zelda helps her out. So we're learning more about these characters, but they're all those dreams are bleeding together, but not in a traditional way. It's not like bleeding on the screen or anything like that. It's just suddenly they're all inside each other's dreams.
That's it. It was like Rose is mashing them all up together. She's retaining them all, but all of a sudden Hal and Dolly are in Zelda's dream, and then are in Ken and Barbie and Tenborn's dream, you know? And so she just starts mashing them together, and it's all of a sudden out of nowhere as this vortex. And I love that whole imagery. I love the look of the vortex in the sky, but then it happening on the grass. You then suddenly have Jed rushing in, you know, again.
In his superhero
outfit. And them all getting whisked down into this vortex.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I do love that poor Ken's dream, his personal dream of I guess something happening with him and another woman, turns into an absolute nightmare as Barbie arrives with Martin Tenbones and sees him in the car having a bit of fun.
Exactly.
And it suddenly turns into a nightmare for the two of them, which plays out in the hospital later on. Yeah. She's not talking to him anymore.
And it's to that point as well that Morpheus says, you know, no one is safe until the vortex is dead. And this is the reality of what she can do within the dream world. Yeah. And with the boundaries of the waking world.
I do wonder, and I'm just not 100% sure about this, whether this is Morpheus trying to teach her a lesson about her powers, almost. Because she's breaking down the walls between the dreams, but it happens to be very specifically her friends that are there, and they're all being dragged into the vortex. She wants them all back and is saying, I'll sacrifice myself if I get them all back to Morpheus. And I wonder, is that him convincing her that it's not only her friends that are going to be gone, but look what happens to just your friends because they're closest to you. Yeah. I'm just not 100% sure. It doesn't really matter, I suppose, but whether it's happening or not, whether it's happening to them or not, but it is an indication of how bad it could get for the vortex if she starts breaking down the walls between everybody's dreams. The whole world will die, effectively, is what Morpheus has said anyway.
Yeah. And effectively, with that, you know, Morpheus and Rose stood opposite one another. It is Rose sort of relenting really to the fate that she will die once Morpheus has taken the vortex power away from her, in a sense.
And Morpheus doesn't really know what to do. That's kind of the thing. He's going, I have to do this because this has happened in the past. But he doesn't really know what to do. He doesn't know how to snuff out the flame of the vortex. He just knows if he kills Rose, then that's the end of the vortex, right? Yeah. So that's kind of his only option. But it ties into Unity Kincaid.
Yeah. But just before Unity, though, the moment where Fiddler's Green comes in to exchange himself, I really, really like just the pleasure he had being in the human waking world with Rose as almost a sidekick for him. Absolutely. He absolutely loved. And it just, Stephen Fry just put this across so well. And then sort of the realization that he's a place, not a person, and just the way he turns that desolate landscape that both Rose and Morpheus are into this lush green paradise almost. I just thought it was really, really good. I thought the spectacle of it was great. I thought the sincerity around what Fiddler's Green is trying to do, really, really good.
It's beautiful, and I
really
love that
good.
line to Rose just before he changes, saying, if you do stay in the dreaming, please come and sit under my branches. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, it was really good.
And I loved being human with you.
And then sort of sets up, this lush paradise where this evil, awful deed needs to take place. But as you say, then Unity comes into this dream with Lucienne after we see Unity popping up at Lucienne's library, where she is looking for a book about her life.
Yes. So this is something that I'm not sure whether it has come across in the show really well, but I love that they kept it in here. Lucienne's library is the library of dreams. So it is every possible future of everybody.
Yeah.
Effectively. So, with the fact that Unity has been asleep for 100 years, the question that she's posing to Lucienne is, can you give me the book of what would have happened if I hadn't fallen asleep, which is available in the dreaming because it's every possibility of every person. So do you remember back in episode 1, I think it was, or episode 2, when Lucienne was talking to Morpheus about the damage that had been done to the dreaming? She was saying all the books are empty.
Yes.
Effectively, all of those dreams have been lost, was the inference from that, which is a huge impact. And now you see why it's a huge impact, because someone like Unity had her entire life ripped away from her.
Yes.
So all of those dreams that she could have had for those 100 years are gone. So, to this moment here where she's just looking at and reading this story and reading this book of who she is and who she could have been, gives her that power to be able to say, well, actually, Rose isn't at fault here. I can save my family. I can actually do something here to allow Rose to live on, have the life she deserves, because I was supposed to be the vortex. It was only because of Morpheus being trapped for those 100 years that she wasn't the vortex.
Yeah. No, I love that as well, where Unity says to Rose, give me the power. And Rose is like, well, how? And she goes, we're in a dream, and just takes out this heart-shaped crystal with the glowing center, which then Unity sort of takes and absorbs in order to become the vortex then that can be killed effectively. She's lived, as she says, it's her willing sacrifice for her great granddaughter, which was really good. But also then just that she, I've had a longer life than I should have had. Normally I had my golden eyed man.
Yes.
And you just see all the ears and emo hairdo prick up from Morpheus.
Hang on a second. Did you say golden eyes?
Golden eyes, piercing golden eyes. And this sort of ravels into this larger plot that's been happening. We were saying, well, how did she get pregnant? How was she impregnated? Was it some horrific thing that actually happened in the hospital? And in the end, it is part of Desire's plan to skip the vortex into someone effectively that is a descendant of the Endless. Now, we don't know what would happen if Morpheus had killed Rose, being one of being a descendant of or child of the Endless. But I think Morpheus just says, or Lucienne just says, with all that entails. So it's pretty serious, you know. But I just loved how it raveled into that to realize, actually, Burgess wasn't the plan of Desire.
He was part of it.
It was part of it, but that was put as the plan. I've got something else going on, so you're thinking it's a new plan, but this is totally premeditated scheming from Desire here. Absolutely. I mean, she must really, really hate Morpheus.
They do, yeah.
I mean, even though it's all kind of a little bit of a hate with a wink wink and a nudge nudge, because they can't as such cancel one another out themselves, I'm guessing.
But Desire, again, being the head of their realm, hates the idea that Dream thinks that his realm is more powerful than their realm. I really like that. While there is this kind of flicker of joy from Desire when Morpheus has found out their plan, I'd say they're pretty annoyed that it failed, because it was really well plotted. As you say, the plan was that Burgess would lock up Morpheus and maybe kill him, or maybe he would be there forever. That was part of the plan. But while locked up there, Desire had this backup plan, which was effectively going to end off with Dream killing one of the other members of the Endless, who would be punishing him for that. That's a question for the future. So, but he would be punished for spilling blood of the Endless.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
a very important thing.
And which brings, a little showdown, a very polite showdown between Desire and Death, with Desire introducing a lovely swishy cattail, which I do think showed their true feelings here, with it swishing a bit more as they realise they've been found out.
Oh, I love it.
So it was really, really good. But I just love the, just the quiet threat. It's like a parent raising their voice at a child, where the child suddenly realizes, oh, I've done something bad here. It stands down.
But the threat from Morpheus is fabulous.
It's really good. Do it again and I'll forget you are family. Do you really think you can stand against me and Death?
Yeah.
So, pretty pointed.
Absolutely.
Don't do it again. And you can tell with the cheeky glint in those golden eyes that Desire will most definitely try and do it again.
They absolutely will. Mason Alexander Park as Desire is so perfect. Just got that real playful attitude, and as you say, the addition of the cat tail in there to kind of show, ooh, I've been found out here, but not to, again, still that manipulative spirit in there,
Definitely.
I've been found out here, but this isn't going to be the last time. You know what I'm like. I'm Desire, really, really good. Absolutely loved Mason Alexander Park in there. Definitely hope they're back for season 2. Sure they would be if we do have a season 2. The rest of the Endless will hopefully appear, but we did get mention of one more member of the Endless.
We certainly did. Delirium.
Yes, we did.
How exciting.
Yes.
I thought that was pretty good. We still don't know the missing one, though.
You do not? No. I saw some person quote the other name of that missing Endless, and I was really angry, even though people who've read the comics have known it for 25 years, but I was really annoyed that someone quoted that other member of the Endless. I know.
Although I can just go through the different D's in the dictionary.
There's quite a lot of D's in the dictionary. Yeah. It could be Derek, the other member of the Endless. I am a member of the Endless. That's what's
drama.
Good. But Delirium, just because the name has now been mentioned, Delirium was that sigil that was on the wall that I was saying to Chris a couple of weeks ago. Did you catch what their sigil looked like? What her sigil looked like? The sigil is fab. It's just popping clouds of various colours. Very cool. So, so check that out.
Yeah, good stuff.
So we'll hopefully see Delirium in the future as well. Let's get into the wrap up of the episode, because as we mentioned, the show itself has all led to this. All chapters have led to this end sequence, and everybody gets a kind of closeout moment here. Really because of that dream that Hal had, where he realizes himself and his drag queen version of himself can work together. There are two parts of the same whole. We finally see that he's willing to give up his home, this home that he never wanted in the first place, but made do with it, I suppose, to follow his dreams again. And very quickly, Chantal and Zelda agree that they're going to buy the house. And he's going to be able to take the money and go to New Jersey with Rose and Jed. So I really like that I know it's a very quick resolution, but I really like that that's resolved that whole storyline with Jed.
And Lyta is there with her new born baby, who is not going to be called Hector. I'm so glad that she didn't do that.
Yeah. Only one Hector for her.
Exactly. So yeah, that was really good.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, and really cool. They formed their own little family.
Yes.
With Liza baby, Rose, Jed, Hal, and Rose's former housemate, the guy who almost got killed by Corinthian.
Exactly.
So nice to see their family, and we see even more story. This is a couple of years on. We see that she's written a novel in the dream world. So we know it's eventually going to get published, and then it cuts back to Rose, who's just finished the manuscript of it and is questioning whether to send it off or not, and is getting pushed by Liza to send it off.
Yeah.
But we do know that Lucienne thinks it's a great book.
Yes.
Even though the main protagonist might be something that would annoy Morpheus.
Definitely. And I love seeing Morpheus going back to work there, sort of, almost that kind of Icelandic shot by the volcanic, on the volcanic beach with the big rocks. And I felt my, faith in Morpheus rewarded that he also rewards Galt here to become a dream rather than a nightmare. And
Galt looked fantastic.
It did,
as well.
really good.
Yeah.
I love the sort of the schematic stuff of the nightmare behind with the missing face. I'd like to see that come to fruition.
It's like, maybe I'll go for noses for eyes this time, or ears for eyes. How about that? Maybe teeth for eyes was just too far.
Yeah, it could be willies.
It could be.
Who knows? And then just also, realizing there does need to be some changes. He asks Lucienne to look after the affairs of his kingdom, his palace, whilst he is there creating her. It was just really good. Lucienne looked really pleased, and I just thought, her faith rewarded here.
Yep.
So
delegation, always
really
important
exactly.
when you're running an organization as big as Morpheus is organizing. I love that he's going into creator mode now. He's going, right, it's time to create some new dreams, time to create some new nightmares, and I don't need to run the day-to-day. Lucienne did that reasonably well for 100 years, so delegate a little bit of power over to your right-hand lady.
Definitely. Yeah. But we do finish off with a Lucifer Morningstar moment as well.
With Mazikeen back as well. It was very cool. And the introduction of a character that always is very odd, Azazel, in the comic books, the kind of lord of another lord of the demons of hell.
Head of the lords of hell.
Yes.
In a sense.
Yes.
Yes.
But a very interesting visual for the character, these multiple mouths that are inside this crack or strike through the dimension almost.
It looked a little weird to me, I'm not going to lie. Yeah. It almost felt like it hadn't got the full CGI treatment. But at the same time, then I kind of got used to it, and it actually reminded me of the mouths of the creatures from Attack the Block.
Absolutely, yeah.
I quite liked it in the end.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking of a mix of Attack the Block and the Muppet Show. I love the puppeteers and Muppets. There's no criticism. I love that, but it felt like it was puppeteering behind the scenes with these scratches through. I don't know how you do it any differently to the way that they've done it here, but it's exactly how it looks in the comic. It's exactly what it looks like on the page. Yeah. These eyes and mouths staring through from this other void, effectively, all speaking differently to Lucifer, all threatening effectively Lucifer to take over from her as the head of hell, effectively. So all saying, we're ganging up together. I guess in Christian mythology, or I guess that's what you call it, Azazel is also another of the fallen angels. It's not just Lucifer Morningstar. Remember, Lucifer Morningstar was the greatest of all of the angels, the top level, the closest to God. Azazel is another of those fallen angels that fell in the war, effectively, and landed up in hell. So Azazel is a very important one of the angels. So,
yeah, I like that he wants to attack the dreaming so that then he can attack the waking world and then the Silver City. Effectively, we're locked in hell, So if we can't leave, let's just make hell bigger, effectively. Give us more real estate.
Exactly.
And, Lucifer doesn't trust him, but, she says he can't be trusted, but he's not wrong. And she acquiesces that she will do something. I just love then that she says that will make God absolutely livid and bring Morpheus to his knees. Yes. Big stuff. A really great closeout, actually. And I mean, just teeing it up for season 2. Netflix.
That's a massive story as well. I can't wait. Can't wait to see it. Hopefully, maybe between now and then I'll get you to read the story, John.
Interestingly as well, as she looks out on her hordes of demons, it really looked like just the square outside St. Peter's in the Vatican.
That is intentional.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. That's
fiery St. Peter's, I guess.
Yeah. Exactly. It does look exactly like that. Yeah. I believe that was on purpose as well. It's a great moment, isn't it? It feels really epic that we've got this version of hell, and may hopefully see more of it in the next season. Yeah. Good stuff. Any other points and notes from the episode, John?
No, nothing from me. How about yourself?
I have one note and one thing that we've missed and didn't talk about. The note that I really like is, the story that Chantal is not unable to get through the line. She's unable to get through it's a dark and stormy night.
Yes.
And Zelda helps her. That's a ghost story from M.R. James from 1895, a ghost story called Lost Hearts, which the episode is named after.
Very good.
So,
yes.
Lost Hearts referring to obviously the vortex that Rose pulls out of herself. Desire lives inside of her own heart, remember, as well. So lots of connections with hearts, but the actual name of the episode is taken from, or the name of the issue in the comic book is taken from this ghost story.
Good stuff. Actually, one thing just to say, Morpheus punishes the collectors as
That's absolutely my other point.
Yes.
Yeah.
They get their just desserts, effectively, which I thought was kind of, as he punishes the collectors, he says to feel the pain you've slaughtered and to feel the grief of those that mourn them still. And really good.
I absolutely love it because, again, it ties up with what we were talking about earlier on in the season. Without Corinthian being in the world for those 100 years, he wouldn't have inspired the depths of depravity that these particular serial killers. It's not like murder didn't happen before. We know Cain and Abel killed each other. They are, or Cain killed Abel. We know that murder has always been around, but what Morpheus is saying to Corinthian is if he wasn't in the world, it wouldn't have inspired the kind of depravity and monstrosity that has been in this world with these serial killers, these people that come out and actually have a convention to celebrate how great they are, and what they're doing is murdering and killing. I love the punishment from Dream. He hasn't punished anybody this season. Remember, he put John Dee back in the hospital. He did pull Galt out of the world and put her back into the world as a dream. He's taken Corinthian out of the world, but it's not a punishment for him. He's just saying, you were badly made by me, so I'm going to uncreate you. So these are the only people he's really punished this season. Which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And closes out the story very well.
It does. Excellent stuff. Derek, what did you think of Chapter 10 of The Sandman, Lost Hearts?
This is the perfect closeout to the first season of The Sandman. I love how they've done this. Again, this show is being based on comic books that came out monthly. There was another story coming in a month's time after this story ended, but they've pulled together the exact right parts of the issues of the comic to create a great 10-issue season that feels like a graphic novel. It feels like a book, one complete storytelling. The start of why Unity Kincaid was the way she was asleep for 100 years, how she became the Vortex, and how Rose became the Vortex, and why there's this battle for the future of the dreaming, effectively. So a great overarching arc across the entire season with some excellent stories coming in to flesh out this beautiful world of the Sandman. I think this is exceptional television. I hope we get to see more of this. I'm so delighted it's been so successful. after waiting 30 years to see what this would look like on the screen. I think they've done an absolutely brilliant job, and this episode was a great capper for it. Closed out the stories really well, paid off on really small moments from earlier on in the season in really big ways in the last episode. So absolutely love it. How about yourself, John? What did you think of the closeout of the Sandman season 1 and episode 10?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I can add more than what you've said. I really enjoyed this. I'd give it 5 mini teeth-eyed skulls out of 5.
Beautiful.
Yes. I just thought it was really, really well done. I loved how it brought in the plot and scheming of Desire. Mm-hmm. I mean, I loved just the threat of Rose here and the sacrifice of Unity Kincaid. I love that literally, all the members of the house of the B&B got their moment here in this episode. Yeah. Fiddler's Green as well, and seeing that come to life. Yeah. So I really, really enjoyed it. And the scheming and plans that Lucifer will do, at the behest of Lord Azazel, then really, really good. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'd give this 5 mini teeth-eyed skulls out of 5. R.I.P. Corinthian. Yeah, you absolutely were a nightmare, but no doubt you'll be created again.
But brilliantly played by Boyd Holbrook.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well. Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you like this. I know we don't mention it very often. Myself and John have covered another Neil Gaiman property. We covered Good Omens, which Neil Gaiman wrote with Terry Pratchett before. Myself and John had covered that, and I know you really enjoyed that translation of that book to the screen as well over on Prime Video. So this is a very different story, though, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But it does have some of the same kind of concepts from Neil Gaiman. I know you've read a lot of his books as well, but you know that idea of him leaving those breadcrumbs and turning them into this final moment at the end. So good stuff. Really glad you enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll get to see more. At least we have one more episode of the show to talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
With our thoughts done on episode 10, let's get some of your thoughts. Let's go over to some feedback. We do have a bit of feedback in on chapter 9 first. So first up, Elizabeth sent us a voicemail with her thoughts overall on the season so far.
Hello, and thank you, TV Podcast Industries, for making such a great podcast. Sandman was a friend recommendation, and Strange Indeed sent me to you for the podcast accompaniment. Thank you so much for filling in the gaps. Even though I'm an avid reader of graphic novels, I've stayed away from DC and Marvel, but now I will completely devour the entire Sandman, whatever they have. You have the most eloquent listeners that write in. Thank you very, very, very much for this coverage. Your friend in California, totally tubular, Elizabeth.
Great stuff, Elizabeth. Great to have you on board for the Sandman.
Absolutely.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's really great that you joined us, Elizabeth. And thanks so much to Rima and Paik over on Strange Indeed podcast for recommending us as well. We're avid fans. I think I've been on Strange Indeed twice. I know I've podcasted with both Paik and Rima multiple times, and really good friends with them. So thanks so much to them for the recommendation. Great to have you on board with us, Elizabeth. We do have some of the best listeners out there.
Yes,
as well,
absolutely. And eloquent.
Very eloquent.
Very eloquent.
Absolutely. Here's Robert Williams with his thoughts on chapter 9 as well.
Yes. Robert sent in an email to us and said, well, there it is, the cereal convention. Derek, I think it was you that hinted at that a couple of weeks ago, and it's just as funny as I expected, especially like the irony they would have rules to obey. I would certainly feel uncomfortable going to a convention of killers, no matter who I might be, not knowing what kind of shenanigans might break out. Mm-hmm. I know you'll probably touch on this, so forgive me, but what's the importance of the name? Anything other than hiding? I'm assuming there's some kind of control someone can yield with the name of a dream, and does that exist to all dreams? How about Morpheus himself? I'm beginning to see how Mr. Gaiman and co. can come up with 9 seasons worth of material. Mm-hmm. It's getting very good with each passing episode. Thanks for all the work and all the shows and movies you cover. watch out for the cereals, Robert. Yes, exactly. In particular, All-Bran.
Yes, you're not a fan of All-Bran, are you?
No, it's like needles of bran.
It's not that bad, John.
It's
you have
dreadful.
to give it another try. Excellent stuff. Thanks very much, Robert. On the names thing, this is about Corinthian avoiding giving his name to people. It's actually because Corinthian doesn't have a name. He was a nightmare. The nightmare was called the Corinthian, but it'd be very difficult to say to people that's your real name. But he can give that name to the other serial killers, because they all go by their nom de kill, I guess. Yes. What you call it. So they all use their own identity covering names, so he doesn't have to do that with them. But when Jed tries to continue to ask him what his name is, he doesn't give it to him, basically. So that's as far as I know. I don't think there's anything else I might be missing there, but please send us in your thoughts or your ideas if there's something that I've missed.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks,
great,
Robert.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Robert. Victor Von Doom on Facebook for episode 9 said, "Greetings, dreamers. I don't know what to say about this episode, but yuck. But it got better. The serial convention reviled me. Someone should have walked in there with a flamethrower. Lucienne seems like a lover scorned, but she is right about Morpheus. Will it take another visit from Sister Death to get his head on straight? When Jed walked in on the boogeyman's execution, then ran into Funland, I almost shuddered. Who would think his savior would be the Corinthian? Of course, he had his own motives. Nighty night, dreamers." Thanks, Victor. I completely agree with you. I think there is a real menace from this, which doesn't adequately get resolved until episode 10. So, which is one of the great things about it as an episode. It leaves you crawling until the next release. But of course, Netflix dumped it all at once. Yes. So it does,
just scroll on to the next one.
You can just scroll on to the next one to see justice, effectively the righteous flamethrower of justice being given by Morpheus here. And so, it is a really disconcerting episode for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that I'm sure as a writer, it's probably the difficulty or the joy, when you think about this idea of a serial killer convention. Oh, we've got 100 serial killers who are meeting for the first time together, and then I've got to pick out 4 or 5 to highlight them. So you want to make them all different and weird and interesting, and even though they're very dark and very creepy, I do love the way they're created. Someone like Funland, where you go, oh God, that's a really horrible creature that lives in the world, and then you get to add someone like Nimrod or the Good Doctor, and then the Corinthian. You get to layer on all these different types of characters. It must be a really interesting thing to do as a writer, to go, right, blank slate, I have 100 different serial killers. I need to highlight them and make them all different and creepy. So if you felt like you shuddered at the idea of Jed walking in on the execution and then Funlad, that's absolutely the intention. I think it's carried off really well in the show to show those weird characters. Good stuff. Thanks so much, Victor, for that.
Yeah, thanks, Victor.
One final piece of feedback on episode 9 from the wonderful Lara Willie-Swink as well.
Greetings, TV podcast industries. This is Lara. I have some feedback for episode 9 collectors, and I was just going to send you written feedback because I love to hear you read it back in your beautiful accents, but I thought I would give you a little bit of a breather and send some audio myself. This episode, hot damn, that was thrilling, engaging, and totally skin-crawling. Though I was a little disappointed that the show, unlike the comic, let the cat out of the bag about the serial convention and what it actually was. I still think the event name on the marquee as they entered the hotel was used to hilarious effect. So still gave a little bit of that feeling that you got when you found out in the comic book what the serial convention actually was. Every scene with Funland just made me so uncomfortable, but all the serial killer dad jokes were great. I am so glad that Dream and Lucienne made up. We all know that Dream's Achilles heel is his pride, and that, yes, he can be a bit of an asshole sometimes, as any eternal monarch with great power and great responsibility can tend to be. But apparently 100 years in captivity has taught him a little bit about humility, because he almost apologizes to Lucien in admitting that he's wrong. Though that didn't really help him with his bedside manner when confronting Hector and Lita. I wasn't sure at first, but I liked how they reworked Lita and Hector's story in the show. But I've learned to be patient with things on the show because they always make sense in the next episode, and that change definitely did. I know the show is distancing itself from the DC universe, so making Lita and Hector regular people wrapped up in Rose's weird vortex is perfect. And it still leaves us with a child conceived and gestated in the dreaming that belongs to the dreaming, which may have some portents in the future. If we get one, come on, Netflix, where is season 2? Everything that Dream did was right. Their existence in the dreaming was corrupting nature and the universe and destabilizing the dreaming, but it's not the message that's wrong, it's the delivery. I'll admit that I really wanted to hear Dream call Hector a little ghost, and hear Lita say that line that she says in the comic when he tells her that the baby is his and he'll someday come for it. And she replies as he leaves, "Over my dead body, you spooky son of a bitch." But maybe they'll insert it in the finale episode. Again, the casting on this show is sheer perfection, as Stephen Fry plays Gilbert exactly as he is on the page and how I imagined him in my mind. Boyd Holbrook is still killing it, all puns intended, as the Corinthian. I think the screen version is even more compelling and charismatic than the comic version. Well, that was a pretty thrilling and cliffhangery sort of penultimate episode. I can't wait to check out the finale and then move on to our bonus episode. And I really can't wait to hear what you guys think of this episode. Good night, dreamers.
Oh, fantastic. I'm so glad to hear your thoughts on episode 9 there, Lara. That was really, really fun. I know Lara had that recorded, just after she watched the episode for the first time and just missed sending it in for our cutoff for episode 9. That is just one of the difficulties with Netflix, isn't it? That you have all the episodes there, and especially with a show like this, you just can't stop watching it and then suddenly going, "Oh, sugar, what episode am I on that I need to send in feedback to the podcast?" or whatever. So thanks so much for your thoughts there, Lara. Really, really good to hear. There, as we know, there have been some changes from the comics, some to make a bit more sense, some to take out connections to the DC universe. I think really now that we're at the end of the overarching arc, the 10 episode season, I can definitely say the choices that they made in this show to update it and to amend the storylines to make it more, sometimes more coherent together as a story. I think they've done a great job. Remember again, when Neil Gaiman sat down to write that first issue of Sandman, he had no idea how long the series is going to go on for. So even some of the things that he was putting in there were just to try and sell comics on the shelves effectively when they were coming out first. Whereas now he can have the opportunity to look back and put together this much more coherent story over the course of the 10 chapters. So great stuff. And thanks so much, Lara. Great to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks, Laura, for your thoughts. Really good to get that insight, like from Derek, around someone who's read the comics and has really enjoyed the show as well, and loving the puns as well.
Absolutely.
So, really good. Thanks, Laura. Moving on to our episode 10 feedback, we got an email in from Victor Von Doom. Greetings, dreamers. Having read only volume 1 of the comics, I must say I enjoyed everything about season 1. The Corinthian speech was eerie as a Hitchcock soliloquy. I was glad Dream interrupted it and, with helpful hints from the nightmare, put things right. Why do villains do that? The formation of the vortex was fantastic. Unity's sacrifice was also very touching. Will he really take Lighter's child someday? Morpheus's mercy to Fiddler's Green and confrontation with Desire showed two sides of him. I think Lucien, as well as Death, not to mention Unity, rubbed off on Morpheus. Galt's transformation was also very befitting. I can hardly wait to see what Morpheus creates in his workplace. I sense a possible alliance between Lucifer Morningstar, Desire, and Despair against Dream. Where would God fit into all of this? Like Bob Dylan sang, you gotta serve somebody. I'm now on to the comics volume 2. See you next streaming season. Nighty night, dreamers. Victor Von Doom. Great stuff, Victor. Thanks, Victor. Thanks for your thoughts. I pretty much agree with everything you've said there. Totally my view on episode 10 as well.
Yeah. And I would say my big advice for you, Victor, is to continue reading. If you enjoyed volume 1, it gets better consistently over the course of the 8 to 10 volumes that are in there. I think it's actually up to about 12, depending on how you've been gathered together the volumes that you're reading. But a lot of what you're asking will play out in the future. How does God fit into all this? Well, God is a God in this world. God does exist in this world. Angels exist, devils exist, demons exist. So God does exist in the world of the Sandman. So will you see them or not? I'm not going to spoil that in case you do want to read on further. But yes, we've already seen the mention in this episode of the Silver City, which is a reference to heaven. So and where Lucifer fell from. Yes. They may appear in the future, but I'm not going to spoil any of the questions. Will Dream take the baby of Lyta? Well, that's the threat. It was born in the dreaming, gestated in the dreaming, therefore it's part of the dreaming. So we've seen that even with him being a bit nicer to people around him, we even see him smile in this episode, in episode 10, with Lucien. He still has some rules that he may follow in the future. So that is a future story that may be explored.
It would be a really interesting one as well.
Yeah, as we said.
Will he follow through on his threat to Lyta?
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah,
exactly.
Great stuff.
Over her dead body, as Lara called that.
Yeah.
Out. Thanks, Victor, for your thoughts.
Thanks, Victor. We also got an email from Dr. Bob Phillips. What a wrap. We explore the fragments of Floridian dreaming. We have a perfect English idyll, restored and made endless by a tri-generational compact of powerful black women. And 10 episodes of learning have finally gotten through to Morpheus. Visually, it's stunning. The voluptuousness of the Chamber of Desire has echoes of the inside view of a heart's chamber. Hell reflects every memory of Mordor and Transylvania and a summer in Merthyr. I know exactly.
Is Merthyr in Wales?
It certainly is. I know exactly what he means.
Sorry to our
It
Welsh
is like,
listeners.
and if you go there on a non-summer's day,
Right.
it's even more like hell.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
really interesting.
Sorry to our Welsh listeners, but
No, absolutely. No, I don't mean that in a bad way. It's because of all the slate.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just this almost like landscape of dark grey slate.
Fantastic.
It's really crazy.
Maybe the Rings of Power will use that for Mordor in the second season. Over there.
Yeah, it is. It's it's so strange driving through there. And finally, he says, I want to say thank you, producers, for letting the Lord of Dreams have a bacon butty or two and get some flesh on his bones at last. Maybe his growing warmth is just a reflection. He wasn't being majestic. He was just hangry.
Fantastic, Dr. Valve. Really glad you enjoyed this season and enjoyed the final episode. Yes, maybe the Lord of Dreams was just hangry.
Yes. Well, everyone gets like that at some point, don't they, Derek?
I do all the time. And poor John has had to put it up with it for 16 years now, isn't it, John?
Yep.
Thanks, Dr. Valve.
The hangry Hulk comes popping out.
That's me. That's me.
Thanks, Bob.
Absolutely. We also got some feedback in from Lara Willie Swink on episode 10. She says, greetings, fellow dreamers. As a long-time Sandman fan, I had heard rumours for over 2 decades of screen adaptations just to be disappointed when the rumours did not pan out. but then I would actually feel relieved that they weren't going to destroy a property that I loved so well. So when I learned that Netflix was actually going to bring the dreaming to life on screen, I was very skeptical. I even found the initial clip of Roderick Burgess a bit underwhelming, but now at nearly the end of the first season, I will have to say that pretty much all of my hopes for the series were realised. The show cleaves so closely to the comic in spirit and theme that it satisfied the devoted fan in me, but the additions and logical changes in character arcs and plots have kept me fully engaged as a television viewer. All this preamble to say I loved episode 10 and the entire series as a whole, with just minor quibbles. The confrontation of Dream and the Corinthian added a bit more drama than how it was depicted in the comics, and the Corinthian actually felt like a credible threat for a hot minute, until Rose woke up, that is. Fiddler's Green was glorious when he revealed his true self, and if I were Rose, perhaps I would have taken up Dream on living forever in that realm. Speaking of revelations, the reveal of Desire's long game was amazing. Dream confronting his sibling in the threshold was right off the page, but somehow even cooler. Mason Alexander Park is deliciously devious and snarky in just a few minutes of screen time. Morpheus finally having a change of heart and recreating Galt as a dream seems to have thawed his cold imperial demeanour a bit more than in the source material, and the mic drop ending with Lucifer is just begging for a season 2. Come on, Netflix! Lara continues, that being said, I'm not sure how I feel about the Pollyannification of Unity's pregnancy with Desire, whether it occurred in the real world or in the dreaming, which I would have issues with how that would happen, but the show keeps it ambiguous so that viewers can come to their own conclusions. It's still a violation through deception and gaslighting. I know they didn't want to exploit the assault, but I don't know if glossing over it as part of a pleasant dream is much better. Perhaps it made it better for Unity that she never knew the full truth. The show is less dark than The Page, but I'll allow it. Perhaps as someone who read the comics when I was a cynical Gen Xer in my youth, similar to Mr. Gaiman, I've grown into an older adult who wants to see some light at the end of the nightmare. Extremely excellent coverage of the show. I know Derek is such a huge fan like myself, and I always appreciated his and Chris's insight, as well as experiencing the story through John's fresh eyes. A 10 out of 10 porpentines on the episode and the series for me. Excited to hear the final bonus episode next week.
Yes, my fresh teeth-lined eyes, in fact.
Yes.
Lara.
How do you see out of those things,
munch.
John? Fantastic.
I get hangry 3 ways here. Mm-hmm. Through my left mouth eye, my right mouth eye, and my mouth.
Excellent. You go through food so quickly, John. That's all it is. I do understand what you mean, Lara, about that kind of backstory of Unity and what happened and how Desire got to her. But I'm kind of with you as well. I was definitely in my youth a bit of a darker person when I read these comic books, and I've probably come more to the light. I don't think we needed to dwell on the story of how Unity got pregnant as much as what it was that Desire's intention of turning her offspring into the vortex. I think that was a much better way to focus the story for the show. It's a bit lighter, as you say, but I think it works for the show for me. I'm really glad at that change. I think as one of our pieces of feedback that we got earlier on in the season was we didn't need the Kill Bill moment of the brutality of how it may have happened. We needed the intent and we needed the reason behind it more so. And I think that's
and that has come out. I mean, I think certainly for me, the implications of what was being put on TV was, okay, well, how did this happen? And of course, we've found that out now. I think as Lara, as you say, it's still by deception, it's still for ulterior motives, and that has, been exposed now. That even though, it's been withheld from Unity before, because she's died by taking the vortex back, but yeah, I mean, that was the weird thing for me in this, was that moment in terms of the implications of what was being said. But nonetheless, I guess as well, at least for this series, it has huge ramifications. It's about that sibling rivalry and ultimately the desire for this sibling rivalry they will go to any lengths
just to mess with their brother.
To bring the downfall of their brother.
Exactly.
Even if that means going into someone's dream. And again, that's the other interesting, or sleep. I guess that's the other interesting thing for me with Desire's involvement in this. I think earlier on I mentioned about where does dream stop and desire end, and I think these boundaries of them are really messy and great for that.
Exactly. Desire is everywhere. Dreams are in dreams.
I think even during this podcast, I said Desire's dream.
Yes.
And Derek was like, "You mean Desire's plan?" I was like, well, same thing.
Yes. Yeah.
It was her dream.
Exactly. Yes.
And a plan to put in place.
Yeah. Yeah, good one. Good stuff. Excellent stuff. And once again, thanks so much for your thoughts, Lara. Hopefully you have some thoughts on the cats and Calliope next week as well. We also got an email in from Coffee and Vodka on the season, but he wrote it pre-episode 11, so I'm going to read it on this episode. Coffee and Vodka says, "Greetings, fellow Sand season defenders. There are a number of must-have graphic novels such as Craven's Last Hunt, Daredevil Born Again, and The Dark Knight Returns, but two absolutes are The Watchmen and The Sandman, two works that don't garner fans as much as they do potential zealots. So coming into the series, even with Neil Gaiman himself at 1/3 of the helm, was a scary proposition. But once seeing the show as its own thing that respects the books, while smoothly streamlining it for TV, it was an enjoyable ride. Dream's dual journey from captive to becoming more powerful than ever and micromanaging overlord to boss of the year was well handled. The cast of characters, no matter how small the role, were all well fleshed out. The stories flowed into a single narrative while hinting at much more to come. We were introduced to Desire and Despair, who were great, but Death outshined even Dream. Outside of her, which of the Endless are you most looking forward to seeing? For me, it's Delirium and Barnabas. Also, my series standout besides Dream would have to be either Lucienne, John Dee, Hal, Death, Gilbert, Funland, Lucifer, Matthew, or maybe Unity. It's nice to have a show so good it gives you a case of the Johns when it comes to the best character. Series average 4.5, second seasons out of 5. Peace and take care. Coffee and Vodka. John, just for those of you who may only listen to our Sandman podcast, John is notorious for, when asked for his choice of who his favourite is, giving a list of 20 or so.
Yes. Why limit yourself to just one?
Absolutely. You can choose as many favourites as you want to.
Good stuff, Coffee and Vodka.
Which of the Endless are you most looking forward to seeing? Well, I'm going to be the only one that'll be able to speak on this, really, because we've seen all the Endless that have been named. Delirium is the one I'm most looking forward to.
Yeah, same here, because it also chimes with one of my best or favourite dance acid tracks as well.
Yes, Delirium. Who's that by again?
Delirium.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Excellent. Looking forward to seeing Delirium. Hopefully we get the entirety of all of the Endless in the next season. But as I mentioned earlier on, Act 3 of the Sandman Audible is available now, and there are more of the Endless in that act. Thanks, Coffee and Vodka.
Yeah, thanks, Coffee and Vodka. We finish off on Facebook with Ben Rush, who says, "Near perfect translation of the book. An excellent end of the first season. Bring on the season of mists."
Ooh, yes. Lots of great stories to come. I hope it keeps going. There are rumours that Neil Gaiman has got a backup plan. If Netflix don't renew the series on Netflix, he does have the right to ship it to another company. Given that Anansi Boys and Good Omens are both on Prime Video, it's entirely possible that even if Netflix pass on doing season 2, we may get season 2 over on Prime Video. So that's the good news. We still don't have any news right now on whether Netflix are renewing it for a second season, but I'm really hoping we're going to see more of these stories. I was wondering, with that release of the single episode, this episode 11, which we'll be covering next time, I was wondering if that's a way you could also do it, where you could have 3 or 4 episode arcs just being released at a time, rather than dropping 10 episodes in one day. Then you're spreading out the story arcs and spreading out the ideas. Maybe it won't be like traditional TV where you have to do one season at a time, because the comics aren't like that. They are stories in their own right. Some of them can be longer or shorter, and some of them can be a few episodes. Some of them can be split into one episode.
All I can say, though, is they need to be careful, they don't want to go Doctor Who on it.
Where it disappears for 3 or 4 years,
exactly.
and that is one episode. Yeah,
and you've only got one episode or 2 episodes, because it's effectively ruined Doctor Who for me. And I wouldn't want to see that format brought in, even though it might just be standalone ones. Do it as a series of episodic shows. You know, there's still much to be said about episodic, but where you release a Christmas special and then 8 months, 9 months later, you do your October,
Halloween special,
yep. And not have at least a flow of 5 or 6 in the case of the BBC shows. You know, it makes it really kind of just bitty. Now, there may be less episodic though. That's almost the problem.
Yeah.
But I still think, don't go down that route.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm quite adamant about this.
I understand.
I'm not for turning.
I understand.
And I don't mean it in that way.
But the good news is, if they do move to Prime Video, we could have an instance where it could go weekly, because I think Prime Video shows are weekly, which is great. Yeah. So hopefully, if Netflix don't change their plan of dropping everything in a day when they release season 2 of Netflix Sandman, then we do have another bit of good news. If it goes to Prime Video, then they could drop weekly, which would be awesome. Yeah,
but I think it would be great going to Prime Video, because then you'd have a nice Neil Gaiman cluster of shows there. We've got, you know, season 2 of Good Omens that is in the pipeline, and Anansi Boy as well. Great. You know, they could, I think...
Yeah, they have American Gods as well over on
so
over
it's
Prime
a
Video.
Nice Neil Gaiman cluster there.
It certainly is. It certainly is. The Neil Gaiman corner of Prime Video. Would be awesome.
Perfect.
Excellent. I think that's it for all the feedback for this episode of The Sandman.
Great stuff. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. And thanks, everybody, for sending in your thoughts. We want to hear your final thoughts for our final episode. We will be recording our final episode of The Sandman next week. You can email your thoughts into feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com. Let's hope it's not the final ever episode of The Sandman, but emailing your thoughts. We'd love to hear what you think of the one-off Chapter 11, The Two Tales, including the animated Dream of a Thousand Cats and a story of inspiration in Calliope.
Excellent stuff. Yes, fellow dreamers, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you stay subscribed to the podcast. And if you enjoy what you hear, please subscribe, review us, rate us, and why not share it with your friends, family, and dreams, in fact. Because sharing the podcast is, of course, Derek.
Sharing the love.
Exactly. Yes. You can also support us through patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries or buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TVPI.
Absolutely. And thanks to all of you who've been supporting us there, and all of you who've been sharing the podcast. It's been great. Been really
great
good
stuff.
That's it. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again next time.
Yes, thank you so much, fellow dreamers, for joining us for Chapter 10. Good stuff, seeing how the old dream world sort of fell back into place. Really good. Remember, until Chapter 11, keep watching, keep listening, and keep dreaming.
Bye.
Nighty-night.
Bye.
Nighty-night.
Bye.
Nighty-night. Oh no, we're stuck in a dream.
Oh no. I'll get you out of it, John.